If you've been thinking about making a move to the Seattle area and you're wondering what the true cost of living is here in this area, that's just exactly what I'm going over in today's video, so make sure you stay tuned. Hey everyone, I'm Bryce Greenleaf. I'm a local real estate agent here in the greater Seattle area. And I love making videos all about moving to Seattle, living in Seattle, and the local real estate here in this area. So if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to my channel, hit the little subscribe button and a little bell so you get notified every time I make a new video. I love making content about this area and I love helping you guys out. I get calls, texts, and emails all the time about people moving to this area or looking to buy or sell real estate in this area. So if there is anything that I can do to help, or you just have any questions that I can answer for you about the Seattle area, make sure you reach out to me and I'd be more than happy to help you out with that. But like I said, let's jump into the true cost of living in Seattle, Washington. So there's multiple different categories I'm gonna go over here to give you a good overview and a specific overview of what you can expect to pay. Things like utilities, transportation, grocery bills, rental prices, home prices, taxes, all that kind of stuff. So I want to start with transportation. And transportation in Seattle is 37% higher than the national average. Now you can expect gas prices here in early 2021 to be about $2.80 to $3 for a regular gallon of gasoline. Now of course there are some places in other parts of the country that are quite a bit cheaper than that. I'm sure closer to $2.25 to $2.50 a gallon. But that's where we are right now, is about $2.80. Along with that goes into public transportation and car insurance costs. So, you know, we don't have the greatest public transportation in this area compared to some of the other big metro areas around the country. We've got the local city buses that you can take. We've got a monorail. We have a light rail that is partially completed, but they're doing a lot more to building more onto that. So that should help improve the public transportation in this area. When they're done with that, that light rail is going to extend all the way up to the Linwood area, and it's going a ways down south as well. So we're hoping that will improve some of the public transportation. But if you're commuting into Seattle specifically from one of the suburbs, you're going to spend a good portion of your time sitting in that traffic because rush hour gets so bad here. We're really landlocked between the Puget Sound and Lake Washington when you're coming into that area. So it's a narrow opening to get right down into Seattle. So there's a lot of cars that get stacked up. You're going to be sitting on the freeway going at low speeds and definitely using some gas. So that contributes a lot to the higher transportation costs in this area. Now the second thing that I want to talk about here are groceries, the costs of groceries. And so in Seattle, it's 8% higher than the national average. Now this isn't all that much, and I think a large part of the reason for this is because of all the natural grocery stores around here. Places like Whole Foods and Trader Joe's and a lot of other local natural grocers in this area. A lot of Seattleites are very health conscious, so a lot of them, a large majority, shop at these stores, and it's going to raise our average grocery price. But there are still plenty of other cheaper options, cheaper grocery stores, places like the Safeways, the Fred Meyers, Albertsons, QFC, Winco, Walmart, all those types of places. I have personally lived in Idaho as well, and always shopped at Winco when I lived there. We've got a Winco here close to where I'm at as well in the Seattle area. There are a few Wincos around here. Really the difference between the Winco here and the one that I shopped at when I was in Idaho is not very much at all. It's very, very similar in terms of those grocery prices. So if you're shopping at one of those stores, a Winco, a Walmart, even a Safeway or an Albertsons, your grocery costs aren't going to be all that different from maybe the rest of the country. All right, in category number 3 here, we're going to talk about is utility bills. So this is things like your water, power, sewer, garbage, internet bills, cable, things like that. So in Seattle, it is actually 37% lower than the national average. Now, a large reason for this is because we have a lot of hydroelectric power plants here because of all the water we have in this area. So that really saves some money on power bills, specifically electric bills, and really helps reduce those costs. Along with that, like I said, you're going to have Wi-Fi, internet bills. I personally pay about $60 a month for our Wi-Fi, and you can expect to pay anywhere from $50 to $60 a month for just a standard download speed Wi-Fi. I'm sure most of the country is pretty similar in that fact. I'm sure there's not a ton of variance in your monthly Wi-Fi bill. But with Xfinity, which is the popular Wi-Fi provider here, internet provider here, you can expect to pay about 50 to 60 bucks a month on your Wi-Fi bill. In terms of cable, I personally don't have cable, and I know most of the people that I know don't have cable, but of course some people still do. So if cable is a consideration for you, it is gonna be expensive. I'm sure you're gonna spend at least 100 bucks a month on cable, if not more, if you're getting a lot of the other premium packages and channels. I personally just go the Netflix, Hulu, Amazon Prime, Disney Plus route, and just use those streaming services because they're much cheaper, and I haven't had a need for cable. But if you are looking at cable, I'm sure that is going to add at least 100 bucks a month onto what you're spending, if not closer to 150. All right, category number 4 here we want to talk about is childcare expenses. So it is relatively expensive here. If you're going to get full-time childcare, you should expect to pay at least 1,500 bucks a month for one child for full-time childcare. Now this is likely at a childcare center. I would expect you to pay at least $1,500 to $2,000 a month. If you're in some of the more expensive areas, like right in Seattle or on the east side, closer to Bellevue, Kirkland, you might be spending more than 2,000 bucks a month on that childcare. But some of the other areas might be looking closer to $1,200 to $1,500 if you're in some of the cheaper suburbs, but it's not cheap either way. So it's definitely something that you need to consider. I know some people do kind of the nanny shares where one nanny watches kids for multiple different families, and that can help save a little bit. But overall, it's not cheap. Personally, for my family, we decided to have my wife stay home to watch our daughter because it just made more sense that way. So a lot of families do that because of the cost of childcare in this area. All right, in category number 5, let's look at taxes. So a lot of states around the country are going to have an income tax. Thankfully, and one huge selling benefit to living in Washington State and the Seattle area is you do not have a state income tax. So that's going to save you a good chunk every single year. I know some states will have anywhere between a 5% to a 10% yearly state income tax. I know California can get up to 13%. So that's a huge benefit to being in this area, is not having that state income tax. Now, when it comes to sales tax, we're one of the higher in the country. So you can expect the state rate is 6.5% for the sales tax, but you're also going to have a local rate. So it depends specifically on what city you're in, but you should expect to pay anywhere from 9 to 10.5% on a retail sales tax. All right, so let's jump into real estate prices, housing prices, what you should expect to pay to live in a specific home or an apartment when you're moving to this area. So we're going to look at both Seattle and then the surrounding metro because many of you moving to Seattle aren't actually going to live right in Seattle. You're going to look at a suburb. So it's important to compare those as well. So let's look at a 1-bedroom apartment, and in Seattle for that 1-bedroom apartment, you should expect to pay just over 1,700 bucks a month. And then when we're looking at the metro area, taking the average of all of Seattle and the surrounding suburbs, you should expect to pay about 1,500 bucks a month on that 1-bedroom apartment. And for a 2-bedroom place in Seattle specifically, you should expect to pay just over 2,100 bucks a month, and in the metro area as a whole, about 1,800 bucks a month. And then for a 3-bedroom, it increases quite a bit at just over 3,000 bucks a month for Seattle, and just over 2,700 bucks a month for the metro area as a whole. So one thing about Seattle is the rental prices are actually relatively cheap compared to our housing prices, our home sale prices. Now, these rental prices might not look cheap to you if you're coming from a different part of the country that's not California, New York, or one of these really expensive states. But when you compare it to these other places like San Francisco and New York, maybe Chicago as well, just some of these bigger metro areas, these tech areas, we are actually relatively low, especially when we compare it to our actual home prices. So if you're moving to this area and you're thinking about renting first, there should be some good options for you to consider. All right, now let's look at actual home prices. When you're buying a home, what are the home sale prices look like in this area? So again, we're gonna look at Seattle specifically and then some of the surrounding areas so you can kind of compare and contrast, because Seattle is more expensive than most of the other places. So median home price in Seattle right now is $777,000. Now this is up 11% year over year. This increase of 11% is pretty common of what we're seeing throughout the country. Many places between 10 and 15% growth in real estate. It is a hot market just pretty much everywhere in the area in the country. So we are seeing a really strong growth in housing prices. There are plenty of people moving to this area area for jobs and whatnot. So we're seeing a lot of growth because of that. Now let's take a look at Tacoma, which is just south of Seattle and is a really popular city that's growing. Now, traditionally, Tacoma wasn't necessarily a place that you wanted to move to. There was a lot of crime, wasn't very family friendly, so housing prices were really low there. But actually last year at one point, Tacoma was the hottest housing market in the entire country. So it is growing really, really rapidly. Right now, the median home price in Tacoma is $400,000. So as you can see, it's still way cheaper than living in Seattle, almost half the price in terms of the housing prices. But this did increase 22% year over year. So the increase in Tacoma prices was double that of the increase in Seattle home prices. So growing quite a bit, but it's still much more affordable, one of the most affordable places here in the greater Seattle area. So it's definitely something to look into. Now let's go the opposite direction. Let's go north of Seattle to Everett, which is the next biggest city on the north side of Seattle. And the median home price there is $522,000. And this increased 16% year over year. So as you can see, this has grown quite a bit too. There's a lot of people moving out of the city of Seattle. They're going both south and they're going north, and it's increasing the prices of these suburbs pretty rapidly, increasing at higher rates than the actual city of Seattle is increasing. But however, you can see that it's still a lot more affordable than being in Seattle. And there's some other suburbs outside of the city of Everett that are close that are even cheaper. So there's a lot of different options that you can consider. Now let's look at the metro area as a whole. And when I'm talking about the metro area, I'm going to talk about the three counties of King County, which is where Seattle is, then the county to the north of Snohomish County, and the county to the south, which is Pierce County. So as a whole, the median sales price in these three counties is $586,000, and that's a 10% increase year over year. So that gives you a good general guideline of what you can expect to pay if you're not looking to live right in the Seattle area. Of course, there are options closer to the 400,000 range, even the high 300s, or even if you're looking at a condo, you can be in the 200s if you're just looking to buy a condo. These median prices that I'm going over are for residential homes, so condo prices are of course quite a bit lower, but there are plenty of options outside of Seattle to live that are much more affordable. So I've got an interactive map here that really shows us the difference of cost of living between Seattle and the suburbs. So let's look at that real quick so you can get a good idea of some other options you might want to consider other than being right in Seattle. So as you can see here by the shaded different colors of red or pink or purple, whatever you want to call that color, you can see that Seattle is relatively expensive here on the scale down at the bottom. As we go to the east side of Lake Washington, so we're talking about places like Bellevue, Redmond, Sammamish, Cottage Lake, Mercer Island. A lot of these places are even more expensive than Seattle. Bellevue is famously known for the headquarters for Microsoft. Bill Gates and Jeff Bezos, the two richest people in the world, live there. So your average home prices in Bellevue are going to be up over $1 million. So it's getting really, really expensive over there. But as you can see, when you move further north, you're gonna get some break in your home prices, just like I was telling you. Right up here is the city of Everett that I was talking about. You've got some other surrounding suburbs that are more affordable than Seattle as well. So there are plenty of options up here if you're looking to move to the greater Seattle area, but you just don't want to be right in Seattle, or you don't need to be. Of course, it depends on your transportation, your commute, where you're going to work. But there's some other options you can consider. Same thing can be said for going down south. Like I said, Tacoma down here is one of the cheapest areas that you can be if you want to be relatively close to Seattle. Other good spots like Federal Way, Kent, Auburn, that are much cheaper than living right in Seattle. So let's take a look here and scroll through and pick out housing costs specifically, so you can see how much housing costs are actually influencing the cost of living here. Most of the other categories are going to be pretty similar no matter where you're at, but the housing cost is what drives this. You can see again on the east side here how much more expensive it is than really the rest of the metro area, which is a lot cheaper than those Bellevue, Redmond, Mercer Island, and even Seattle areas. And then let's look at the transportation costs here real quick, kind of to summarize what I was saying of, you know, if you're commuting down into Seattle and you're sitting in that traffic, your transportation costs are going to be quite a bit higher. You're going to spend more time just kind of going at a slow rate of speed on the freeway trying to get into the city center and really just spending more on gas, versus if you're living up on the north side or even the south side and you're not even commuting into Seattle, maybe your job is closer to where you live in one of these areas in Pierce or Snohomish County, your transportation costs are going to be quite a bit lower, and it isn't going to be anything that's higher than the national average. It's going to be very similar. Gas prices might be a tick higher than the national average, but nothing too extreme, so nothing to write home about or to be too concerned about in any way. So this summarizes the total cost of living in the Seattle area. As you can see, it really varies by whether you're in actual Seattle or not, or if you're going to be in a surrounding suburb. That cost of living can change quite a bit. The actual home price that you're looking at can be cut in half just by going to one of the local suburbs. So if you've got any more questions on the cost of living in this area, definitely comment down below and let me know. You can also let me know what city you live in right now. If you want me to compare it to the cost of living in Seattle, I can certainly do that for you. And if you've got any questions about moving to this area or living in Seattle or the local real estate, definitely reach out to me here at my info. You can call, text, or email. I'd love to help you out. Like I said, I love helping out people move into this area and helping them find that right spot and finding that right home for them to get into. So any questions you have, just anything about the Seattle area, definitely let me know. And if you haven't already, make sure you subscribe to the channel, hit the little bell to get notified every time I make a new video so you don't miss anything that I'm putting out. But otherwise, I thank you for watching this video, and I'll see you on the next one.